You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. I'm Jill Waterman, the show's creative producer. I'm also host of our new monthly series, Picturing World Cultures. Documenting a culture can be a daunting process, particularly when it involves a history of conquest and colonialism. Invading forces wreak havoc on native populations, seizing power and scrambling cultural codes in ways that echo across generations. The framework for communication shifts, adding to the potential for misinterpretation and missteps. Synthesizing such a complex and traumatic past in a contemporary narrative is a formidable task requiring extensive research and dedicated planning. This is the backstory to today's podcast, which explores indigenous culture in Guatemala. Our guide on this journey is Juan Brenner, a self-taught photographer born and raised in Guatemala City. After forging a career as a fashion photographer in New York for more than a decade, Brenner returned to his native Guatemala, where he began making work about the people and the complex territory in the country's Western Highlands. He uses photography to reflect on the fluidity and abstract nature of identity and territory, and the way power structures and inequality continue through time. Brenner's photographs have been featured in publications internationally, and his first monograph, Tonatia, was shortlisted for the 2019 Pari-Photo Aperture Foundation First Photo Book Award. For the same project, he was a winner of Lens Culture's 2019 Emerging Talent Award. Additionally, he's a founding member of the art gallery and project space Proyectos Ultravioleta in Guatemala City. Juan Brenner, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Jill. I'm so happy to be here.
It's great talking with you today. So, as I said, you grew up in Guatemala City and you picked up a camera and began photographing there as a teen in the mid-1990s. What kind of pictures were you making back then?
Oh my God, terrible ones. It was really basic. I bumped into photography. It was almost an accident. It's a funny story. I took my dad's camera to the shop and I had to test it for my dad. And I pushed the button and everything went to hell. My life changed right there. But it was really primitive, pre-internet, early 90s were really complex in Guatemala. Mid-90s were a little bit more hopeful, but everything was really weird. I was doing pictures of my friends. I was really shooting whatever I had in front of me. Was trying not to do whatever was understood as photography back in the day, pictures of volcanoes, rivers, lakes, indigenous people smiling, like tourist trappy kind of stuff. That was photography in Guatemala in the mid-90s.
Mm-hmm. Well, during most of your youth, Guatemala was enmeshed in a long and bloody civil war. So what effect did that have on your mindset back then? And what, if any, influence did it have on those pictures that you were making?
So complex. I was born in late 70s, right? And that was probably the most complex moment in war. So I guess our parents kind of created a bubble around us, let's say middle-class kids in the city, right? So there was a bubble around us. The thing is that in my case, both sides of the war were like internalized in my family. I had family that were fighting or at least rooting for one or the other side. So it was really, really crazy. It was complex. I think that moment, the 90s, the war was about to be over, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we were really hopeful about that, really, really hopeful. My father worked for the military at some point. My father was a doctor. And then my mom's really close family were in the jungle fighting for the guerrillas. So it was hard for us. It was crazy times,
Yikes. Wow.
But at the same time, we grew up in a bubble. So now I understand it. Now I feel it. Now I can process everything, But at the time, it was just a bubble, basically.
Yeah. So basically, you were just photographing within that bubble.
Definitely. Friends from college, At some point, I started shooting on the street. And that's when I bumped into having to have a conversation with someone to have a portrait. That was also really important for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, very early, you decided to move to New York as a 20-year-old, and you spent 10 years working as a fashion photographer there. Did your time in the U.S. alter your view of Guatemala once you returned?
This is the hardest questions of them all, because that bubble I was telling you about, that kind of blocked a lot of things from everyone, especially stuff that came from outside the country. Like
Yeah.
there was not a lot of tourism during the war. So we didn't have contact with stuff that was coming from other places. My view of Guatemala was the view inside that bubble. Let's say this new moment of my career right now kind of changes everything because I burst outside of that bubble. And when I came from New York,
Mm-hmm.
I had to come back because I had to do rehab. I was really, really, really immersed in the party, fashion scene, drugs, alcohol, and many other things. So I had to come back to Guatemala to get clean, did rehab. And after rehab, I decided to stay here. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm confronted with reality, with the first time ever in my life where I was in Guatemala by myself. I knew a bunch of people, I knew everyone, but I didn't understand what was going on down here because I had all these amazing things happening in New York for 10 years and the rhythm of the city. You know how it is. Guatemala, it's
Yeah.
like so slow. So it was very, very hard for me to come back.
Yeah. So I assume you would have to create a whole new social group.
The hardest thing for me was to retire from fashion photography because I knew I was not going to be a fashion photographer in Guatemala. And I knew I couldn't go back to New York, or otherwise I was going to die, basically, like that dramatic. It goes like that, black or white for me. So I decided to stay in Guatemala and stay clean and kind of
Right.
work on my mental health. I don't want to say I had to choose between my career and my sobriety, but if I had to, I would choose my sobriety. So
Yeah.
that tells you everything.
Kudos to you for that.
Thank you very much. It's 16 years now. I'm really happy.
Wow, that's amazing. So the recent projects you've done focus almost exclusively on the indigenous people and environment of Guatemala's Western Highlands region. When did you first visit that region? And can you talk a little bit about the people and general environment there?
Definitely. The Guatemalan Highlands, it's probably one of the most complex and complicated places I've ever been to. Guatemala's population might be right now 60% indigenous, 40% Ladino, mestizo, mixed. But up there in the highlands, some towns are 98, 95% indigenous. So that gave us people from the city a different idea of the reality of the colonial process made us think of indigenous people in a different way, in a way that it's not reality. So growing up, the idea I had from the highlands was extremely different to what it really is. And also growing up, it was hard to go to the highlands because the war was happening right there.
Right.
It was dangerous to go there. So for me, I always grew up knowing it was a dangerous place to be around. After the war, it became dangerous for other reasons. So it's always been, for me, a dangerous place in many different ways.
Mm-hmm. So when was the first time that you went there?
We grew up going to Lake Atitlan there, which is one of the most amazing places in the world. And my mother is from a town called Quetzaltenango, which is the second biggest city in Guatemala. So my mom's from there, right?
Okay.
It's a very dense place. There's a lot of people in each town, beautiful mountains, really complicated roads, far away. You sometimes have to drive 16 hours to get to some places there. Like I used to think it was a far away, dangerous, beautiful place.
Mm-hmm.
And it is exactly what it is, but I see it different now.
So your decision to photograph and focus projects on the highlands was influenced by a trip you made to the Andes region of Peru, Bolivia, and Ecuador, where you encountered what you call indigenous power. What do you mean by that term?
Okay, I'm gonna try to make this short because it changed my life. It's one of the most important moments of my life. I didn't do photography for like 5 or 6 years, right? because I could not do photography here in Guatemala. And I started a design studio with my partner. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a bunch of design clients, and one of our clients was this big producer of photography events around the world, especially in Latin America. He was doing a bunch of work in South America, especially Ecuador. I
Mm-hmm.
got to spend a lot of time there because I was creative directing the shows, graphic design and everything for photography shows. So I was never away from photography.
Mm-hmm.
I always managed to stay close to it, right? And once we're there and you start traveling, you start going to the mountains, you start experiencing the Andes. Then I went to Peru, the Sacred Valley. Then I went to Bolivia, El Alto. And it blew my mind, to see these towns that were 98% indigenous and they were thriving. In El Alto, Bolivia, I encountered Alfredo Mamani's Cholet architecture. These are like $2 million houses up in the mountains, and it's not even about being indigenous or not. It's about living far away from the cities and being able to like thrive like that. And then I realized that Guatemala, our timeline, especially when it comes to economics, it's on a line with the rest of the world because we had a 36-year war. And then in the middle of that war, we had a huge earthquake in 1976 that destroyed more than half of all the infrastructure in the country. It was like someone took a bite of half of our country.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was extremely hard to thrive. And so we got on a line. And then we never had agrarian reform. You know what I'm talking about? It's when the government gives back land to the indigenous people.
Ah, right.
We
Yeah.
never got that. The first time we tried to do that, the fruit company destroyed our country and gave us a 40-year war. So I experienced these people, they never had a war. Of course, they had a colonial process, a terrible, horrible colonial process, but we were really unlucky that we got that war.
Mm-hmm.
So I
So the-
never knew indigenous people with power, never seen it. I knew indigenous people had money. I knew indigenous people were getting out of this horrible thing, colonialism and war. But I didn't understand that until I experienced it in South America.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, oh my God, I will do a project about indigenous power. That was indigenous power for me. But I was really wrong, extremely wrong. So I started researching a little bit about that. When I was researching and talking to people, someone I really admire, an Ecuadorian anthropologist, told me, Juan, you're actually wrong. I don't recommend you go that way because at some point you're going to encounter with the horrible concept of the indigenous people having the power that white people let them have.
Mhm.
You're never going to find indigenous power because in reality, indigenous people are going to have the power the white men let them have. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that to think about that a lot, even before the portrait being beautiful or me being happy with the image, it's really important for me that the image is done the right way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So completely destroyed my project. It was horrible. But I had this thing inside of me and I said, like, okay, I think I'm ready to do a project for me, right?
Right.
For me, being a fashion photographer was the most important thing in my life. And now I'm here 6 years after coming back to Guatemala. Well, I want to do a photography project. I don't know what to do. So I keep researching. I start bumping into the conquest of the Americas. What do I know about the conquest of the Americas? And it was nothing. And then what do I know about the conquest of Guatemala? And it was like really, really nothing. So I started researching. I bumped into Pedro de Alvarado, who is the main conqueror of Guatemala, and I became obsessed with the guy. So I decided I was going to do a project and I was going to follow his steps 500 years after the invasion and conquest of Guatemala. That was the beginning of the project. Why I did it, it's because in research, I realized I was really ignorant. I decided I was going to do this project and I decided I was going to do a year of research and then a year of shooting and then a year of designing and promoting the book. And that's exactly what I did.
That's great.
Yeah, I just used whatever techniques you use to market yourself in fashion. That's exactly what I did with my book.
So when you were in the research stage, was there any visual component to your research, like notes or drawings or other preparations for making pictures?
Yes, ma'am. A big percentage of that first body of work, Tonatiuh,
Mm-hmm.
are pictures I knew I was going to take. Those were images that in research, I'm like, oh my God, I have to make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
It would be from be on a high spot and take a picture of this river, a landscape of this river from higher ground. So that's something I kind of like planned in advance.
So you were basically pre-visualizing a lot of the situations.
Yeah, because research gave me that. Research gave me all the names of the cities, names of the places, names of the people. I was able to draw a map. And I immersed myself on that research for a year. It was great. I read like 17 books. Haven't read a book in like 8 years before that. Haven't touched an analog camera in also like 8 years.
So once you had completed your research and you started photographing, you decided to follow Alvarado's route. Alvarado was known by the indigenous Mayan population as Tonatiuh, the golden sun god.
Or just the sun, just the sun. Or something really beautiful and poetic, the son of the sun.
Uh-huh.
My book was about to be called The Son of the Sun. That was the other name I had for the book, but I went with 22. Yeah. By the way, he was called that because he was blonde, white, and had blue eyes.
Right. So you followed his path from his entry into Guatemala to where he established the first capital. What were the conditions like in traveling through the region, and how much time did you spend in any given village?
It's really tricky. Like I said, I researched and drew a map and divided all these little towns. So I would have like 12 trips, one trip a month, 5 days a month. That was my plan of attack. Yeah, from research, I must say that 50% of the work was already traced and done, but not photographed.
Mm-hmm.
I was really naive because I've never experienced the highlands the way I did. And I just like grabbed my car and a Mamiya 7 and started driving by myself. And after the second or third trip, I realized that it was a big, big mistake because the highlands, once again, it's really far away and it's dangerous. Might not be dangerous, you're going to get robbed. That's not the danger. The danger is mainly narco culture, narco activity close to the Guatemalan border with Mexico, which is the Guatemalan highlands. So narco activity, it's at a all-time high. It's horrible there. So that's really, really dangerous. And then people in the area have been in trouble for hundreds and hundreds of years. First invasion, then colonialism, then war, then earthquake. The area has been under siege and under fire for the last 700 years. So people are, we say delicado, delicate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these people have been really taken advantage of for the last 700 years. So they have trust issues.
Right.
When I say we, it's because I'm part of both places, but we made them to not trust the mixed people. So having a camera and taking pictures of people down there, it's dangerous. It's horrible. Not because the Mayan people think their spirit is going to be taken from them. That's a very racist and colonialist idea. It's because they're not Mickey Mouse, basically. I call it the Mickey Mouse syndrome. People take pictures of Mickey Mouse and Mickey Mouse cannot do anything. Okay?
Right.
So people in the highlands are not Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, it's an unequal power quotient.
Yeah. On top of that, you have places where the regular government doesn't have much power. It's the Mayan government that has more power. The easiest way to describe it, but in some places, there's two governments. And in many places, the Mayan government has more power and very, very different ways of fixing things. And one of them is like that you get caught doing something wrong, you will get tied in the middle of the plaza and will get whipped in front of everyone.
Wow.
Like that.
And that's not a federal government punishment.
Federal government won't do anything. If they do something, people would get really crazy. Thousands of people will burn the cop cars, burn the cop office, burn people alive. What I'm going to say right now, it's horrible. I'm not proud of it at all. I don't want to romanticize it, but lynch mobs that end up with someone calcinated, burned alive, We have at least like 6 or 7 of those a year in Guatemala.
Oh my God.
Okay. That, oh my God, please make it come from somewhere where it's that we don't understand them. We're not condemning them, right?
Right.
We're not judging. Please, let's not judge. Why? Because the things we love are the things that made these people miserable. That's a horrible conversation, long conversation. I noticed these things. I started understanding the codes. So then I realized, like, no, 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 no. I need an assistant and I need people from each place I go. I need someone who's from the area, who speaks the languages. Sometimes there's 3 or 4 different languages spoken in one town. Guatemala has 28 official languages besides Spanish. 2 of them are spoken by more than 1 million people. Quiche and Cachiquel. The language thing, it's really rich and it's really difficult. So that's where I started like understanding what was the best way to move around. And then I realized, oh yeah, I'm doing a road trip book. So it was dangerous, basically. Yeah.
So you took 3 trips alone before you decided that you needed assistance?
Yes, because after the first 2 trips, that was my first time developing film, right? So then I noticed I wasn't in love with the Mamiya 7 depth of field, texture, the way the glass lets the light hit the negative. I wasn't into it. And my whole fashion career, I shot with the Mamiya RC 67, right? So on the 3rd trip, I decided, okay, I'm going to dust off my Mamiya. Let's shoot with the Mamiya. And after 1 trip by myself with the Mamiya RC67, I'm like, no way. No way. Then I kept the Mamiya 7 with me just for like tricky places, places I had to like be less flashy, right?
So you started out with the Mamiya 7 and then you went to the RC 67 and then you went
Yes.
back to the 7?
The 7 I only had in the car in case I needed it for like tricky places. Oh, I have to go down that ravine. I'm not gonna take the RC.
Right.
So, but I almost didn't use it. Once you start looking at the world through the Mamiya 67 viewfinder, the world changes and there's no turning back.
Yeah, yeah. So you shot everything on film rather than digital?
Yes, ma'am. I shot everything on film. That first project, I shot 150 rolls of Portra 400. That's the only film I shoot, is Portra 400. Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy because I haven't touched a roll in like the last like 8 years, I've only done digital. So it was really refreshing to not have a digital camera with me.
Did the people that you encountered respond differently because you were shooting with a film camera rather than digital?
Most people have no idea when they see that huge tank thing because I have all the system, viewfinder, the little motor down the camera to like wind the film. I have the L grip. I sometimes put a flash on it. It's crazy. So it's huge. It's huge, right? People mostly think it's a video camera. Yeah. I'm telling you, they're like, oh, what are you filming? I'm like, no, dude, it's a photo camera. And people don't believe me sometimes.
And you can't show them what you've just taken, the picture.
Actually, you know what? For Tonatiuh, my first project, I still had the privilege of shooting Polaroid. Polaroid changed everything for me because I was able to, for once, show people on the hood of my car what I was shooting with like little Polaroids. But then I was also able to like give people Polaroids in exchange of their time, of talking to me. Sometimes I didn't even shoot them on film, You just talk to someone, take their portrait and give them a Polaroid. That changed everything.
Right. Was it just a Polaroid back for the Mamiya that you were using?
Yeah, Polaroid back for the Mamiya. I'm telling you, I was trained in the fashion business, so I knew how to do this.
Right.
But do you know what's really funny with Tonatiuh? I don't want to say I'm always having mental health problems, but my mental health is not the healthiest, let's say, right? So I'm always looking for ways to help myself with that, At that point in my life, I was just like dying to start shooting a personal project or something real. And that's why I did it. I did it for me. That's why that project is so strong, I think, and people liked it so much. It's because it was really me finding myself. Okay. And not only through the territory, not only through the people, but just driving around and being out there, and the most beautiful place in the world, just being able to like move around there. And having the camera and shooting and listening to that noise the Mamiya RC makes, like all photographers that have used that camera know that it gives me goosebumps.
Right.
I needed that. I needed to feel I was an artist again, right? Because for the last 7 years, I was crazy working and like just working on the design studio. So this started as something I was doing for myself, like a personal project. After the second trip, I knew I had to make a book. And after each trip, the project was going to be beautiful, So it was beautiful for me to like be able to think like that, be able to like do strategy, to like be conceptual, to like read and like talk to people about it. It was really important for me.
Cool. So once you started working with guides or fixers, how did you find the people to work with and what did they teach you about local culture?
Guatemala is a pretty small country, even though the highlands have high density of people, but Guatemala, we only have 20 million in the whole country. So you know everyone, right? And just like asking the right people, like, hey, do you know someone at this town that can help me produce? I'm good at finding people like that because I'm used to producing, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I needed a producer, It's not called producer, but that's exactly what I needed. Someone who spoke the language, who talked to the people, who would explain in a way that people will like have no doubts of what's going on, right? They changed everything. And now I'm addicted to that. Because now my projects are bigger. I have to work faster. There are other things in play now that it's not just a personal project. I'm doing commissions, or even though it's a personal project, it has a different level of complexity than in the beginning where I was just like being an artist, right?
So you've always had an interest in making portraits, which you describe as a magical experience, almost like a ritual. Given this description, what's your process like for earning the trust of your subjects?
Really complex. Most of my work is done in the highlands. As I mentioned before, it's tricky. You have to be really careful. Just being a photographer is so colonialist, having a camera on you, having this big robot that you like stick in people's faces,
Right.
You have this advantage. And for me, it's really important. I found that the best approach to people is without a camera and without an intention of shooting. Just forget about the portrait. Just talk to them, Ask them a couple of questions. Talk to them about carrots. I don't care. I try to like bump into at least one special trait of people's personality. And from them, I can start building, And if I think that the symphony of image and concept is there, I start showing them pictures I've done. Remember, before I had Polaroids, right? I don't have Polaroids anymore.
Right.
But now I have a book, a printed book. I have a couple of printed books and like so much PR on like magazines and stuff. So now I carry a PR package with me with images and everything, and I show them what I'm doing. The way I do it now is way different.
So you mentioned that there were many different languages. Would the people who were speaking indigenous languages also speak some Spanish? Or how often would the language issue be a real roadblock?
It's not a matter of not speaking Spanish. We have to think this way. I mean, I speak English, but let's say I don't speak English. Let's say I'm from Guatemala, like a regular Guatemalan person that doesn't speak English or speaks very little English. I speak one language, right?
Right.
They are bilingual, sometimes trilingual, because they speak Spanish. They speak either Cachiquel or Quiche, which is their mother language, or sometimes they're from another region. They speak another mother language, but they have to learn some Quiche or some Cachiquel because they're the most spoken languages in Guatemala. The thing with communicating is not the fact that we speak different languages. It's the fact that the structure of the Mayan language is very, very different to the structure of Spanish, right? Think about this. The Spaniards used to bring Flemish priests because they discovered that the structure of Flemish it's closer to Mayan than Spanish.
Interesting.
So Flemish priests were brought here and they will understand the language really fast. And they knew how to teach the indigenous people Spanish and they knew how to learn it. It's very tricky. So it's not a matter of speaking Spanish or not. It's a matter of when I say, can you give me a flower? they might understand I'm taking your flower and I'm not asking for it.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because of the way the language is structured. So
Mm-hmm.
it's very frustrating to feel ignorant. It's
Yeah.
very frustrating to understand that you're very, very ignorant. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not them that are not being able to communicate with you. It's, God, this is so hard. It's colonialism,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
You think that you're better for some reason, right? And then you realize you're not. And that was key for me because I
Mm-hmm.
understood. I talk a lot. I don't know if you've noticed, but I talk a lot. But here, I'm not able to do that because either I will not be understood as I want to because I don't know how to communicate the right way,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or people are just not interested. And that is also valid, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's tricky. Having someone that speaks the language is very, very helpful and sometimes will save your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No doubt. Capturing people's energy has always been at the foundation of your work. Can you talk about how you make that happen during a photo session? Is it, something that happens outside of language?
Yeah, definitely. I think once people tell you, okay, yeah, I'll let you take my picture, let's do it. That's when the real work starts because even though you might have done the hardest part, what if you take a crappy portrait? So, what I try to do is I try to set people on a pillar. Like, let's say, oh, I want these people to look glorious and to look big and holy. Or do I want this person to just look really, really casual? That's where I start like doing my thing. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And it all depends on people's energy. This is something I cannot describe, but I can feel, right?
Right.
So, like, my gut is really important for me. And sometimes I start talking to people, and they might be the best portrait on paper, but there's just either no connection or for some reason it's wrong. And then I'll just like leave it there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, in a past interview, you noted that there's a story behind every picture in your first book. Is there any one story that you find to be most compelling or remarkable?
There's one picture I'm telling you. It's a girl sitting in a bed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
The profile shot view?
yeah, it's kind of a profile shot. There's a bed and there's a couple of like little kid posters on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
That is a 19-year-old sex worker
Mm-hmm.
in a very, very complex town in Guatemala called Chimaltenango. Basically, the doorway to the highlands. That's the first big town in the highlands, right?
Mm.
More than 1 million people, lots of commerce, lots of gang activity, lots of prostitution, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's a 19-year-old Cachiquelian woman.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to take this picture because I bumped into her on the street. She was standing in front of a door, and it just happens that that door is the brothel she works for, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the visuals of a sex worker using a traditional attire, I don't know how to explain it, but it was another instance where I understood the colonial and racist nature of the way I was raised.
Right, right. Yeah, there's so many layers.
It was so weird for me to see a sex worker wearing that attire, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I took that picture. It was one of the hardest pictures in the book because I had to like beg her pimp basically for a week and pay the pimp in order to like work with her. She wanted to work with me since the first minute because it is interesting when you bumped into someone doing something that weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I took the picture and then I didn't want to put it in the book. But at some point I understood it was really, really important. But that picture is extremely important for me because that image made me want to do deep layered conceptual documenting work.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, in that same town, in the same trip, I encountered other images that I'm like, oh, okay, I should not only be doing work for me, right? Now it's time to do work for the community or just to show people what's going on here. And
Right.
then ASU Contemporary Art Museum, Arizona State University,
Mm.
commissioned me with a big piece that I did in that same town that has to do with drug dealing, prostitution, crime activity, stuff like
Right.
that. I did a big project there.
Well, isn't there a big prison there?
Penitentiary Center of Chimaltenango.
Mm.
That's how it's called. Yeah, 500 Salvatrucha gang members were brought into that prison, and it just changed the dynamics of the little towns surrounding the area, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So that's the project I did for ASU.
So were the prisoners actually sort of controlling things within the town from inside the prison? Is that
Yes,
the kind
ma'am.
of
Yes, ma'am.
situation?
Yes,
Wow.
ma'am.
Yeah,
That's exactly what happened. And I don't know right now if I will do something like that again because it was really dangerous.
I bet.
2 weeks before we started shooting, there was a big mutiny on another jail in the Highlands, and people played soccer with other people's heads.
Oh my gosh.
So everything went to hell. No
Uh-huh.
project anymore. Everyone was like, oh, sorry, I'm not letting you take my picture after this happened, I had to reconstruct the whole project in 2 weeks, and I was able to do it. I'm really, really happy. Yeah.
That's incredible.
But Jill, like, oh my God, I don't know how to explain it. It's not that incredible when you're here.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? This is so crazy.
Yeah.
We should talk about magic realism if you want.
Yeah.
This is magic reality,
Uh-huh.
even though I don't like the term, because I just think it's a romantic way of telling us, oh, it's okay to be poor. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be under someone else's boot. You know what I mean? I don't
Mhm.
like magic realism that much, but it is really like a magical, surreal, crazy stuff going on in front of you. And there's so many different things happen at the same time that it's amazing to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think this is a good time to take a short break. When we return, we'll continue our conversation with Juan Brenner about the people and the country of Guatemala. Stay tuned. I hope you're enjoying this chat with Juan Brenner for my monthly series, Picturing World Cultures. But before we go back to the show, I want to give a shout out to Love Me Photo, who recently shared some kind words about our last World Cultures episode, featuring the work of Ukrainian photographer Maxim Dondyuk. She notes, "It reminds me again why photography isn't only about taking photos. It's a way to speak, to show, to support. Take a moment to listen, especially if you are seeking ways to improve others' lives and be the voice for people who need support." We couldn't agree more, Love Me Photo, and we're honored to help give voice to photographers in their efforts to make a difference in the world. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this episode and our show in general, so please leave a rating and post a review on Apple Podcasts. And stay tuned for my next installment of Picturing World Cultures coming up in July. Okay, we are back, and we're speaking with Guatemalan photographer Juan Brenner. So Juan, we started speaking about gear a little bit in the first half of the show, but I want to explore that a little further. You mentioned that during your projects you were shooting basically with analog equipment. Were you also carrying digital? And were you only shooting analog during your fashion photography career? Or did you also use digital tools?
I'm the last generation of photographers that learned and trained analog.
Yeah.
Because I started doing photography mid-90s, only analog. And we were moved to digital because of the market change. I was in New York. I clearly remember 2005, Canon gave me one of the new 1D, 8 megapixels. I was shooting in the studio, and they told me like, hey, listen, you want to try out the new digital Canon camera? And I see people setting up this big computer next to where I was, and they're like, okay, try it out. And I'm like, okay, I'll try it out. And I've seen the little digital cameras that we had, like 1 megapixel cameras already. And I was used to seeing those cameras and looking at the back. And this one, I couldn't look at the image in the back. So I put my eye in the viewfinder and pressed the photo, took my face from the camera, looked to my left, and the freaking image was in the computer's monitor, Jill. And that changed my life. I told my assistant right there, we're done, no more film. Film is over. I knew it was over because I just saw right away what clients were going to see, fast. Right there, crisp. No more Polaroids, no more film, no more clipping and testing E6. Oh my God, it was crazy.
Yeah.
The reason why I did Tone It To and I started working my personal photography with an analog camera is I didn't trust the digital support to be able to translate into what I wanted to do. And also, Why not saying it? I wanted to feel like a photographer. You know what?
Mm-hmm.
The first rolls I did for Tonatiuh, I found myself pushing the button, taking the camera away from my face and looking at the back of the camera, expecting for an image to pop up. It was sad. And then I
Mm-hmm.
realized that's why I love slow photography, because this might sound pretentious, but this is in my head, right? I'm such a
Yeah.
good photographer that I know why I'm pressing the button. I don't need to see it right away. I know what I have, you know? I really don't, but that's what I think, right?
Right.
So that's slow photography, the codes, the language, and everything. It was like riding a bike. You know, I haven't
Mm-hmm.
touched a roll of film in 8 years, but when I got my first rolls, I'm like, oh my God, I still got it. And that gave me a lot of power. There's nothing that feels like a Portra 400 roll of well exposed film passed through the back of a Mamiya R67. I also had Contax G1 with me all the time,
Oh, nice.
35 millimeters. There's
Mm-hmm.
4 images in that first book that are 35 millimeters. No one knows, no one will know.
Yeah, that's a nice little camera and a lot easier to carry around.
Yeah, definitely. But I know the difference between a 35 millimeter and a 6.7. But especially, it's about the lens.
Right.
If we're talking shot, the most important thing for me, one, that 110 millimeter lens, there is
Mm-hmm.
nothing like it. It's not the sharpest, but it's the most beautiful depth of field. And then the
Mm-hmm.
bellows, that like little 4x5 moment they put into the Mamiya RZ67, those
Mm-hmm.
bellows, those are killer. Those finish it for me. It's beautiful. I love it.
Mm-hmm. And what's your approach to avoiding harsh shadows when you're photographing outside in bright sun?
I'm just conscious of it. Sometimes harsh is good.
Mm.
I'm really conscious of it. I mean, I know how to understand the sun. That's the first thing I learned as a photographer. When I got to New York, I didn't shoot for 2 years because I knew I didn't know anything, right?
Mm.
Someone told me you have to understand the sun, and that you cannot
Mm-hmm.
understand with a camera in your hands, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really confident when it comes to shooting outside. You know what's really funny? When people ask me, what's your style when it comes to gear and stuff like that? I do street photography with the Mamiya RC67.
Mm.
That's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way I can describe it, because I do a lot of street stuff, but it's with the Mamiya. It's crazy.
That's cool. Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
my two
you.
herniated discs. It's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I busted my shoulder. I had to get shoulder surgery. My back is
Oh,
bad.
gosh.
Yeah, but I will bring that camera in my casket with me.
Uh-huh.
I don't care.
Well, there's something about your pictures that you isolate one element, and I think that's very much related to that camera.
Yeah.
You know, there's a sense of just focusing in on.
That camera, it's 70% of my photography.
Mhm.
It's just such an extension of my brain already. I have no problem with it. I love it. Yeah.
Right. And what about a lot of your pictures are close up details or still life views? Are you using the same camera and lenses for those or?
Yeah, same camera, but I use the extension tubes. This is really, really funny. A lot of the grills I shoot with the extension tube, right?
Yeah, I was wondering.
No tripod.
Wow.
Yeah, 2.8, sometimes shooting at a 30th of a second or shooting at a 50th of a second.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been using this for so long, you know? I know how to do it. I know how to use the camera. And that definitely gives me an edge and an advantage when it comes to producing in complex places. It's like driving a car. Have you ever driven stick, Joe?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I love driving sticks.
Yeah, when you're driving stick, you don't tell your brain, okay, now push the clutch,
Right.
go to second gear, now accelerate. You don't tell your brain that. Your brain does it like that because
Mm-hmm.
your brain already learned it. It's muscle memory. Exact same thing with technique,
Yeah.
with gear and camera. You cannot waste time thinking about it. And that comes from learning how to work with horrible people in the fashion industry in the late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Fear is something that makes me work in a better way.
Yeah, you have to turn it into a performance.
The thing is that if you're shooting film and if you mess it up, you mess it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You
Right.
ruin it. And that's the reason why now everything I do analog and digital. Now I have a Fuji GFX 100S camera.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Those are great.
Yeah, once I knew I was going to be a photographer again. Yeah, and then I got an agent again in Europe, and their commissions started coming in. And then I'm like, you know what? I have to be up there with the real market. So I knew I had to go medium format. The thing is that I learned that the GFX 100S with the 45 to 110 lens at 80th millimeter, it's 90% the same as how the RC feels.
Interesting.
Really close. So I started only when I did commissions, and when they wanted me to shoot film, I will shoot digital as a backup, but also as a way to show my client images right away because there's no place to process film in Guatemala.
Right.
I don't process my film in Guatemala.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, you want to start talking about that? Yeah, this is horrible.
You ship it to the States?
I ship it, someone goes and takes it, or I have to travel. If it's a job, I have to travel. And sometimes that plane ticket, it's a hit I have to take.
Right.
Otherwise, they won't hire me, you know?
Right, right.
Shooting digital gave me that edge. You know, I could show him stuff that I was going to be really, really close when the film came. But now I'm addicted to shooting both. And in the newest project I'm doing, I'm mixing analog and digital.
Wow. Cool.
I'm never going to stop shooting film, but that Fuji camera, I just changed my life.
And do you have a certain type of images that you prefer to shoot analog?
No. The same image, I shoot both analog and digital. Everything has a mirror.
Right. But then you decide after the fact in editing.
Yeah, there are images that are just better on the digital camera because my eye was at a different level and I prefer that. Before that, digital will be only in case of an accident. But now it's a hybrid world. Images are images, you know what I mean? And now I can say it. I'd rather be hybrid than just analog, definitely. I was taking so many risks just because I wanted to feel as a photographer. Now I know I'm a photographer, so I'm not taking risks anymore, you know, I'm a pro. Sorry, I try to be a pro.
Yeah. So let's talk about your pictures of grills. And grills are the gold and metalwork ornamentation on the teeth of many of the locals in the highlands. Once you found out about these grills, that became central to your project since it references both an ancient Mayan practice to decorate teeth in a similar way, but using different materials, and the fact that it was the search for gold that led the Spanish to conquer Guatemala. Can you give us some backstory on the current trend for grills in Guatemala?
Yeah, it is insane, basically. That's the current trend on grills in Guatemala. Insane. Tonatiuh, the first book, had a couple of grills. There's an image, this gentleman. We're just chatting. I didn't even want to shoot him, you know? And then he just smiles and shows me a mouth full of gold and silver. And the thing here is that I didn't want to take pictures of people. I didn't want to do portraits, right? Tonatiuh for me was doing everything against I've done before. So I didn't want to shoot portraits.
Ah, interesting.
I only wanted to shoot still lifes and landscapes because I've never shot still lifes or landscapes before, right? I was a fashion photographer. I was a director. But talking to this gentleman, his smile shows me the grills, and I was obsessed with gold chains and stuff like that because I wanted to find Genesis, this book, the new book I'm putting out. By the way, Jill, this is the real book I wanted to do about indigenous power, right? I just didn't know how to do it, you know? So those grills I shot in Tonatiuh, that guy's smile shows me that. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, can I take a picture of your grills? And he's like, yeah, do it. Come on. And right then, I knew I needed to shoot portraits. And the portraits came to me just like that. Like people see you with a tripod and the big camera shooting a mountain. They will come up to you and say, like, what are you doing? What's up with that? You know? And then you start talking to people, and suddenly you have 7 people that want to be photographed. Yeah, it is like that. Just don't be a Mickey Mouse person. It's not Disneyland. It's not. They're people, you know? And they're the owners of the land. You know what I mean? By the way, they're the ones letting you be there because they own that land. They've been there for thousands of years.
Yeah.
So in Tonatiuh, I was afraid of showing bling because I didn't want people to sense my fashion background. You know what I mean? When you see Tonatiuh, the images are very like American portraits like perfectly centered and stuff like that because that was my upbringing. I didn't want people
Mm-hmm.
to know I was a fashion photographer, but that was impossible. I think that's one of the main things that made Tonatiuh what it is. It's the eyes of a fashion photographer that left Guatemala when he was a teenager, comes back when he's like in his 30s, right? And everything
Yeah.
changes. My eye, it's the eye of someone who learned how to do photography, be an artist, and be a man in New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's impossible for me to dust that off.
Yeah.
But yeah, the grills, I started seeing it and I knew the Mayans embellished their teeth 2,000 years ago. But then you
Mm-hmm.
understand that people in the highlands are not doing it because their ancestors did it. Some people don't even know the Mayans did it. The thing is that 50s and 60s people had a little bit more money, so they started putting little pieces of gold on their teeth just to cover a cavity or just like
Mm.
fix something so it didn't go rotten, basically, oral
Mm.
hygiene is not a priority when you're a slave, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these people were slaves, and in the 50s, 60s, they stopped being slaves, so they were able to take care of their teeth.
Yeah.
So doctors will recommend put piece of silver because that's going to last very, very long, right?
Mm.
So people started doing it, and there we go. Yeah, it's a dental procedure, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a full mouth of grill. People that have no teeth, and they just put the grills. You know what I mean?
Mm.
People have 5 or 6 different sets of grills, right?
Wow.
You might think it's only the kids that do that. No, no, no. It was only the older people. Only older people had money. You know what I mean?
Right. So how much does this kind of dental ornamentation cost?
So in the beginning, it was gold, but now it's not. Now it's like 80% of what people are doing in the highlands is cheap Chinese alloy.
Right.
So now we have mouth cancer, esophagus cancer, stomach cancer, intestinal cancer, almost tripling.
Wow.
My work is not only about photography, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Genesis, my new book, has a big, big, big discussion on narco activity, on religion
Mm.
as a part of the economical process of the highlands, agriculture as one of the places where money from drugs is being laundered the most in the highlands. The big explosion of
Mm.
money of the last 10 years in the highland has to do a lot with money sent from the States, which is the highest income in Guatemala, the whole country, more than coffee or banana. Did you know Banana Republic? It's a term coined for Guatemala.
Oh, yeah,
We're a
yeah.
banana republic. Money sent from the States, from immigrants, is the highest income in Guatemala. Okay?
Interesting.
And you have no idea how much money is being laundered from the narco state in that money. So there's more money, there's more power. There's a new bourgeois actually coming
Yeah.
up there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Luxury, all this beautiful stuff. But what's good and what's bad? You never know. I'm not going to get into it. I don't want to get killed.
Really.
Mhm.
Wow.
These grills are a blessing and are my condemnation. Yeah, some people feel it's a little bit violent to go so close to people's mouth and everything, but you have
Mm.
kids. They don't even wear the grills because of their parents or grandfathers. They do it because J Balvin or some other reggaeton artist is doing it.
Mm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
Z
Mm-hmm.
generation in Guatemala is the first generation to be fully communicated with their peers around the world.
Right.
This is one of the most important things for me in this new work is that I'm showing people that our indigenous power is not being indigenous. It's not. Some people say Mayan culture disappeared. No, 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 no. There's 16 million people with Mayan blood right now in Guatemala, and Mayan culture is alive. And you can find it on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
Just go to TikTok and you'll see kids dancing with 150,000 followers
Mm.
in the highlands. So technology and hybridization is letting these kids, for the first time in history, they
Mm-hmm.
are connected to their peers all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And people are not understanding how important that is. And that's my new work. That's what I talk about.
Right. So, one of the things you do with this new project is talk about the youth who blend both tradition and contemporary trends. What aspects of traditional Guatemalan culture are they adopting and reinvigorating?
Okay, this is really tricky because the ignorant, sometimes very racist way of thinking, it's, oh, it's so bad that our communities are losing their traditions.
Mm-hmm.
Their traditions are instilled in slavery. Guatemalan fabrics, one of the first origins of Guatemalan, this beautiful Guatemalan fabrics, it was uniforms. So the Spaniard landlords won't get their slaves mixed. Just think about that. Every lord that had thousands of slaves, they had to wear uniforms. That's one of the origins of Guatemalan fabrics.
And they were basically different types of weavings for the different.
Yes, ma'am. And the thing is that in the 1700s, the Germans come to Guatemala to do the coffee business, right?
Mhm.
And they're the first that come with chemical colors. Before the Germans, we only had like 12 colors. After the Germans, we had thousands of colors.
Right.
Just Google Guatemalan textile. You'll see it's amazing. It's gorgeous. It's crazy. That's when it became part of our culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the origins, it's very tricky. And I have to think like this all the time, you know? Oh, I love it. But it's not that good. And that's the way we should think, especially people from here, right?
Right. But are there ways that the fabrics are being adopted anew and given new life?
Kids are more into, I think, the metaphysical connection with nature, the metaphysical connection with their reality, the metaphysical connection with their like gods and with their saints, with their syncretism. Kids are never going to abandon that, but you cannot expect a 16-year-old kid to not want to wear Jordans if he sees it on his phone all day long.
Right. Yeah.
So, oh, they're not wearing their traditional shoes. Their traditional shoes were invented so they will not walk barefoot. It's just a piece of leather.
Yeah.
No. Let the kid wear his Jordans. He's not going to abandon his origins and his traditions. You don't worry about it. You're old. Like, go sit down, boomer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like that. And there's one thing about youth that is really important for me. My work is guided by youth because I don't want to grow up. I'm really connected to youth, and I see that they're the ones teaching us stuff.
So you mentioned syncretism, and your newest project, you're exploring that and the occult in the Guatemalan Highlands. What kinds of practices are you photographing, and how popular are they within the general population?
I started this work because since Tonatiuh, I started bumping into the occult as a big and really casual part of the life of the Highlands. You know, we were brought up Catholic. I think until 20 years ago, Guatemala was what, 80% Catholic, 20% Protestant. And now we're like 65% Protestant, 35% Catholic in 25 years, something like that. So syncretism is Catholicism mixed with Mayan cosmovision. At least in Guatemala, that's the case, right? And a lot of the occult practices are supported by Catholic imagery, Catholic aesthetic. You know, syncretism was a way where people could keep praying and worshiping their deities without getting burned by the Catholics. So the Catholics, being really smart, they understood the connection with the earth and with the deities was so strong that people will die for it. That's when you know you're not going to win. Where people are willing to die for it, you know you're done, right? So what they did is that they taught indigenous people that this deity they worship, it's the same deity the Catholic pantheon has. So the Catholics started creating proxies. So people will go to church, basically.
Interesting.
The proxies become so strong that in the 50s, all the proxies and all the occult figures were thrown out of jail again, back to the street. And that's when they get even more strong. I have amazing images, but I cannot say I'm happy with what I know already. So I'm learning at the same time I'm shooting. I had to change my way of like, I could not like only research. Because that's one thing that I wish I did when I was doing Tonatiuh is that I wish I shot when I was researching too. Because you have these ideas that are so fresh. When I shot Tona 2, I realized that every time, this is very interesting. Every time I push the button, you know how much it cost to me?
How much?
$8.
Huh. Wow.
Film cost, process,
Yeah.
context, scanning.
Yep.
I have it down. Every time I push the button, it's $8. So I did that on my first project. So I didn't have enough money. I shot 150 rolls, and I thought that was the most outrageous thing I've ever done in my life. Now I find myself shooting 400 or 500 rolls for a project. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. And you're also shooting digital, so.
It is great.
Let's talk about magic realism. You mentioned the theme magic realism in interviews, which is often associated with Latin America and most commonly as a literary style.
Yeah.
Given that photography is an art based in reality, can you talk about any methods used to transform that reality into something magic?
There's nothing I can do to make my pictures magic besides photographing magical situations. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, how do you search out those magical situations?
I just bumped into it. Let's say I know there's this big shrine in this specific town, and maybe I've seen pictures of the shrine.
Mm-hmm.
So I know I'm going to go and I'm going to photograph that shrine. But almost always, that shrine image is not the important image. But then I spoke to 4 persons, and these people told me, oh, there's this sacred stone that looks like a monkey up here. And you go and you find a sacred stone that looks like a monkey, all full with candles, because people go, and because it looks like something from nature, they will worship it.
Mm-hmm.
So the main shrine I was going to shoot, it's really boring compared to the monkey.
Right.
I'll take the monkey.
It's like a
Starting
path.
point. It's a starting
Yeah,
point,
yeah.
I know I have to go from A to B, but I know what I found between A and B. That's the important thing. A and B are only things that I need for myself to cover my back, geographical points of interest, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And you also talk about the fact that you're looking to create your own myths in your images. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, that was something really hard for me because I was so scared of shooting again. I was afraid of messing up. I was really, really afraid of messing up. The thing with bumping into all these crazy situations is that at some point you have to guide people a little bit, It's image after image after image of really weird things to untrained eye. Untrained eye is you've never been to Latin America. Once you spend 2 hours here, you understand everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of experiencing the situation. And I think people need to have more of that curiosity, and just don't be afraid, Don't be afraid of getting yourself into trouble, because solving trouble gives you beautiful images. You know what I mean? I love when I have problems. I love when someone doesn't want to work with me. I love when people look at me and just say, go away. I love that because that's going to make me fix that situation. If I see an image and I cannot take that picture because someone didn't let me or because the situation got weird, trust me, I'm going to make that image. And it's my own myth, right? I might not capture it the way I wanted it, but trust me, that image needs to go in the book. There's a double page in Tona 2. On the right side of the double page, it's a picture of a river that I took from a mountain, right? That river, it's important because it got tainted by blood. Pedro Alvarado caught, let's say, 15,000 people's heads in the river. So the river will get tainted by blood. And the towns below knew the Spaniards were coming, and they would leave the towns. See how smart that guy was?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm taking a picture of that river that got tainted with blood, right? And when my eye is on the visor, I know that I need on the left side a picture of a soda bottle, a red soda bottle, broken on the floor. So what did I do? I shot the beautiful landscape, went to the store, bought a red soda, broke it on the floor, took a picture of that, made my double page, and I got nominated for Best Book in Paris. I was constructing my book while I was shooting it.
Right.
Why? because I'm obsessed with photo books. All this time I didn't shoot. All those years I was retired, I bought 1,000 photo books.
Wow.
And I was obsessed with how people would sequence their book, how they would like design their book, how would they present their book. And I was so obsessed that I understood all the codes, applied it to my book. And again,
Uh-huh.
like one of the best thing that ever happened in my life is getting nominated for Aperture's best first book in Paris.
Yeah, yeah, that's a big
You know?
honor. I'm assuming you brought the books back to the Western Highlands and showed them to the people that you photographed and the locals.
I want to say that Tona 2 is complex because sometimes your connection with people is 10, 15 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you tell people like, oh, can you give me your phone number so I can send you those digital pictures, right? And they won't give you their phone number because it's dangerous, right?
Mm.
So sometimes your connection with people just gets broken and you will never see them again. But people that I know, people that helped in the project, people that I stayed in contact with, everyone's gonna get a book. They love it. Are you kidding me? I imagine it because it's insane to see my pictures printed on a book. Can you imagine see a picture of yourself printed on a book?
Right.
People love it, and I'm getting better at it. A big part of my new projects is just staying in touch with the communities because I want to go back and not only give them books, but maybe do a photo exhibition, photo workshop, something. I have to give back. I'm really working on giving back because I feel I've been taking a lot. See, it's the nature of the medium. It's the nature you take pictures,
Right.
right?
Right.
And now I have to give back pictures and other things I can, right?
Well, that's a great place to end on. Well, I'm sure giving back will lead you to new connections and lots more stories to tell. Thank you so much, Juan, for your time in speaking with me today and for the complex stories from the Guatemalan highlands you've shared. But before we go, I'd like to end with a short visual questionnaire inspired by the TV show Inside the Actor's Studio. It's a brief list of questions with one-sentence answers. So, Juan Brenner, with all things being equal, is your preference color or black and white?
Color.
Yeah, of course. That makes a lot of sense. Which image orientation do you gravitate to more often? Horizontal, vertical, or square?
Vertical, 100%. I love portraits. I think I shot my first landscape in 2019. That 6x7 vertical, that 4x5 proportion, it's gorgeous.
Yeah. And what's your lens preference, prime or zoom?
Prime all the way. All the way, yeah.
If you could only carry one lens, which would it be?
A Mia Secor 110 millimeters.
Yeah. And what one photographer, living or dead, has influenced your work the most?
Davide Sorrenti. A fashion photographer from the early mid-90s. He was brothers with Mario Sorrenti, one of my favorite fashion photographers ever. But Davide is probably the reason why I became a photographer.
Cool. Outside of photography, what profession or craft would you most like to explore?
Architecture. I'm a failed architect.
Aha. Cool.
Yeah. I would have loved to go to architecture school. That would have been amazing.
And in a single word, what is your biggest motivation for making pictures?
That's so hard, but I want to make connections. I want to make connections with the places I go to, the territory. It's extremely important for me. Have a lot of respect for the territory because that's what exudes the strongest energy. It's the territory. But then making connections with the territory and the people, the trifecta of understanding the territory, the people, and myself through photography, I think that's my dream.
Yeah, that's a great way to sum things up. So, are there any upcoming projects or plans you can tell us about? When's your new book due to come out?
Genesis, I think, is going to be out in September. So we're going to be able to launch in Paris Photo.
Oh, that's great.
But the book is coming out this year. Yeah. There's not a lot I can say about the book because there are many things that are still gray, but I'm really excited. I've been shooting that for 5 years now. It's the project I really wanted to shoot before I did Tona 2, but I didn't know how. I also did another project. I followed Pedro de Alvarado's steps again to Ecuador. After trying to conquer Guatemala, he didn't find gold or silver here. That's the thing about Guatemala.
Mm-hmm.
Guatemala was really rich, but in quetzal, feathers, conch, jade, things that were more important than gold for the Mayans, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't find gold here. So he goes to South America, try to steal the conquest from Pizarro.
Uh-huh.
Oh, there's a tremendous debacle, tremendous story to be told from that. And I already did 3 trips. I'm almost done. I think I'm done photographing that. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
But listen, he took 3,000 Guatemalan warriors with him as slaves, right?
Wow.
He left them to die in the Andes. So besides following Pedro Alvarado again, I'm looking for those people. I'm looking for their story. Yeah.
Interesting. So where can guests find out more about you and your work?
I like Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I am really active on Instagram. I like the platform. I think it's a little bit dated right now. TikTok is way better, but let's say Instagram, my website. But once you go to Instagram, on my highlights, there's a lot of PR, a lot of features, a lot of interviews that are really interesting if people wants to know more about my work. But my website and Instagram is the right way to do it.
Yeah, great. And all those links will be in our show notes. So Juan Brenner, again, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights about Guatemalan culture. It's been great speaking with you.
Jill, thank you very much. You have no idea how happy I was to have B&H contact me through you. I love the institution. I love B&H. Like just being there. I feel like a photographer when I go there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this is really, it means a lot to me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, it's been great speaking with you. Thanks so much. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed today's show, we'd love to hear about it. Pull up this episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a comment. While you're there, make sure that subscribe button is clicked for automatic updates about every episode release. You can also find us and drop us a line on the Explora blog, where we post photos from our guests along with the show notes. And if you're a fan of social media, please join us on Facebook at the B&H Photography Podcast group, where you can share your favorite photos and comment about the show. I'm Jill Waterman, the podcast creative producer and host of this series. Episodes are recorded, mixed, and edited by technical producer Mike Weinstein. Theme music for this series is composed by Gabriel Richards. Our executive producer is Bjorn Peterson, and our editorial director is Sean Steiner. On behalf of us all, thank you so much for tuning in today.